Great. So welcome back, everyone, and I hope you had a good networking session. So we're all set to start our session two, and today we're talking about the importance of transition management when going from a construction to an operation stage. So before we start the discussion, I would like to introduce you to our panel here today. So we have here with us Dr. Anas Batal, the director of Center of Excellence in Smart Construction and Associate Professor of Smart Construction as well. We also have with us Mr. Michael Moore, the Chief Executive Officer, Saudi Arabia of Cushman and Wakefield. And also with us today is Mr. Tariq Nizamuddin, the Senior Executive Director of Ijada. And the session is moderated by Mr. Yunusa Aminu, the Senior Consultant from Gregory and Jones Consultants. So viewers, please note that the Q&A will be held in the last 10 minutes of the discussion. However, we encourage you to start posting your questions during the course of the discussion. And we do have our networking lounge with an assigned table. So if you want to take the discussion out there post the session, do feel free to do so. So over to you, Mr. Yunusa.
Thank you, Megha, and welcome to everyone, our audience. So without further ado, I'll dive straight in. So it's transition management. Typically, when we talk about transition management, there's a misconception of looking at the handover stage of a project where you have the operational team being brought in weeks or just a few months prior to handover and expected to transition the building into a smooth operational phase. So this is a very delicate process and a very delicate period during any project's life. It's important that the transition management is successfully done in order to achieve the best operational life of the project. So I'll start with you, Michael. Typically having the, of course. So the challenge of having the operational team brought in at the 11th hour and expected everything successful. How would you go about ensuring that doesn't happen, or communicating to developers and asset owners that that isn't what transition is solely about?
Let me start with saying why I think we come in at the last minute. And I think traditionally we've been brought in at the last minute because the client wants to save money. And they think that this will save them money. And that's an extremely naive view, a false economy, if you like. So I think the lesson here is to demonstrate the failures of other projects from a transition team or an operator being brought in at the last minute, demonstrate the failures and the costs of the failures, therefore the value of bringing the transition management team in much earlier. I think, I guess all over the world, but certainly here in the Middle East, money talks. They listen very closely to money, and that's perhaps why they want to try and save money, but they need to see the bigger picture. And the bigger picture, in my opinion, the sooner you bring somebody in to assist moving towards the operations, the better long-term result and the cheaper long-term result will be.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct. Now, connecting to that, Tariq, as a service provider, from a service provider perspective, especially, part of a large organization that have multiple developments ongoing, do you see your value as a service provider coming in early for transition being recognized by the asset owners of the development team?
Absolutely. It is very important and essential and crucial for the success of any project and the transition from construction to operation. Unfortunately, rarely we see this is happening. Usually we are invited to tenders a few weeks before the handover and the TOC of the building. It is very important for FM operator and building operator to attend the testing and commissioning, attend the training, attend the handover from the specialized contractors, take over the systems, understand the training requirements, especially when you're talking about sophisticated building and building that have advanced systems. Um, as was mentioned earlier, money plays a big role on this because involving FM at early stage will require additional budget. In some cases, with the new small developers, they don't have FM departments, so the recruitment of the FM operation team also is delayed. So the project is completed, the handover is taking place, and the FM operator is not appointed, and even the client representative is not appointed. So you have the project team taking over and handing over to another team. And this usually leaves the FM company, service provider, and the FM representative in a lot of issues during the DLP period and post the DLP. Sometimes it takes years to get the issues resolved and the operation is stabilized. So identifying stakeholders in the operation also is delayed. It's not only the involvement of the FM operator, even from the client side, sometimes it is delayed.
That's correct. Talking about the stakeholders, as you mentioned, Tariq, multiple stakeholders being involved. Now, Dr. Anas, you have a lot of engagement with, smart construction and, new construction concepts and all that. So how do you see that affecting the transition and handover period? So when the construction teams and development teams are looking at these, smart solutions and how they tend to develop, is there, do they look at the transition and how they can transfer this knowledge onto the operational teams?
Absolutely. I mean, I'd also echo what Michael and Tariq said about the process and the mindsets and things to do with the contracts and the budgets when it comes to that. And that has to shift and that has to change. One of the reasons why is because now looking at the smart construction and the effects of doing things better in the construction phase or the design phase, we need to make sure we think with the end in mind, which is the operators and the facility managers. And with that, we have been realizing the fact that a lot of operators and facility managers are a lot more advanced than what we have in the construction industry. We all know the construction industry is doing its best to innovate and be more digitized and be more smarter when providing buildings or infrastructure. I'm going to say smarter. I don't mean technology perspective, but also develop livable spaces, develop places that could be maintained, operated in the best way possible, but also to provide assets that could be more sustainable. And when it comes to health and safety and the space of the assets itself, to achieve that the best way possible, we need to make sure that we have the facility managers and operators, as we call them, from very early stages, even from the design phase. Now, when you talk about transition management, it shouldn't be transition management. It should be, and it shouldn't be handover stage, because if anything, the building should be. We all know that the client is involved from projects at the beginning, and for the same reasons, I think the facility management operation should be involved from the beginning as well.
Correct.
Great.
That's a very important point. Transition should not be seen as just the end of the construction or development phase where someone comes in to take over the building, which leads on to looking at common problems found during transition. You find defects that cannot be easily rectified because they are integrated as part of the design of the project. And then you find, there's an extreme cost associated with rectifying that defect. So mostly, projects try to live on with that defect and find a way of mitigating it through operations. Now, Michael, you spoke earlier saying, cost is the key. I think this is where it kind of connects, like looking at how the operators or FM service providers can help mitigate this issue of cost during, taking over a project, finding design defects. So what would you say is the best approach to that, looking at, the early involvement and design during design for operators and FM consultants and the likes?
Yeah, I think just to round off the last point, you should almost be preparing for transition at the design stage. So getting things in place so that when the construction is coming to an end, it's ready to hand over because you've thought about it right through the whole process. One of the services we provide is FM design reviews, and we've done many of these for many types of project development. And although we don't, it's not a value engineering exercise. We don't do it to save money. However, I have yet to do a design review where we haven't saved money if they take on board our recommendations. Very sad to say, it's typically the same things again and again and again. Designers don't particularly think about how the building will operate. They don't think about how you will be able to maintain it. They don't think about whether it's sustainable, accessible. They don't really think about that. They think, does it look pretty? Will it win me an award? Will it win me the next project, the next tender? So design defect, yes, but it's just bad design, in my opinion, because it doesn't think about those things. When we do an FM design review, we try to come up with a practical solution, which is still beautiful, but it's practical. And it won't just be beautiful for the first 6 months. It'll be beautiful for the 30 years because it's a practical design which does operate and therefore does make money. So therefore there's money to maintain it and keep it beautiful. Correct. If it's not operable, tenants won't take the space or the rents will plummet. And if the rents plummet, there's no money for maintenance, and that's a downward cycle. So for me, 100% a good quality FM design review will leave you with a very good asset right through the whole life cycle of the asset from beginning to end, cradle to grave.
Correct. And now, Tariq, I'll ask you this. As a service provider, you would have access to, issues you've faced based on, design defects and poor design, as Michael put it. Is it something that would be useful for service providers to kind of put together, value recognition, which goes into project at an early stage, kind of convinces developers of the value of, design reviews and bringing operators early?
I think that everybody acknowledges the importance of this FM design review. It is every single developer, every single project manager understand the importance of design review. Also, a lot of developers today have design guidelines prepared by by their FM team that include the preferences and the recommendations of FM, of even the selection of material, the designs, what is required to operate the building properly. And but unfortunately, the challenge that you're facing here is, is the developer willing to spend more money to comply with the operation requirement? Take into consideration that the cost of the building operation usually is not paid by the developer. So some developers prefer to transfer the cost from the development cost to the operation budget, which is in freehold, as an example, freehold properties. It is paid by the owners of the individual units. This is the biggest challenge that you feel. Our biggest enemy in FM are good architects and creative architects and value engineering. As Mark Sames mentioned, that you have that creative architects, they come with a crazy design, a beautiful, win multiple awards, but they forget that this building require cleaning and require maintenance, and I need access, and I need space for building operation. All of these ideas are not taken into consideration during doing this creative design. And value engineering was okay. So when value engineering is done, they say, okay, why do you need this? Okay, no problem. It's not necessary. They do it without consulting the FM team. So you have some cases when FM team, but it's simple cases. You go to a building, there is no place to store spare parts and consumables. As simple as that. It's a small thing for the architect or for the designer or a project manager, but for us in operation, it's very important. Where I need to store the items. I'm not talking about design defects, which is go much more deeper than this.
Yes, bad design.
Yes.
It's bad design. If I may just respond to that one quickly, I'll give you an actual example. We did a design review on a very tall building, which is going to be built in Jeddah. Now, throughout that building, it's going to be something like 280 stories. And above story 140, there was not one cleaner's room, not one.
Exactly.
All of the storage was in the basement, and all of the office space was in the basement. And we proved that after spending additional capital to find little spaces for small storage areas, small office spaces, it saved them 896 million riyals across the life of the building. Revenue costs, walking wages. That's after the additional capital. You can save a huge amount of money if you get it right, and it'll cost you a huge amount of money if you get it wrong.
I have a similar example. It's a hotel, 800 rooms, skyscraper with multiple stories. During the value engineering, they canceled the linen shoot. Can you imagine? Exactly. They saved 11 million dirhams.
Okay.
The cost of the linen shoot. But can you imagine the cost impact in the operation? How many cleaners you need, or how many labor you need to collect the linen and put it in the elevator and the trolleys?
That's probably because of the separation between the capex and opex. Sorry, Michael.
Yes, 100%.
That's pretty much the ultimate reason. You know, if we all talk about, because I come from the construction industry, I'm a civil engineer myself, and I've worked in so many projects where, you know, the end line that we talk about is till the moment we hand over the projects, and it shouldn't be the way it's done. And we all think about the capex, the capex, the capital expenditure. How much this building would cost me. So if I'm saving 11 million to get rid of something, such as, for example, we all probably know this, the access panels. We all get rid of the access panels for many reasons, you know, and the access panels exist for a reason. You know, but we as architects, we look at access panels as ugly.
Yep.
As quantity surveys, they look at it as extra costs. As the construction team would look at it as extra work to be done during the project phase. So that they would all agree during the value, especially during the value engineering stage, that to get rid of it.
And blame it on FM.
Yeah.
FM will deal with it. And then we've all lived in properties where we had to put holes through the walls or the ceilings to access certain things, or to find out if they're actually there or not.
Yeah.
So that is one of the biggest issues that we have because of the separation between capex and opex, I think.
Yeah. Well, Tariq mentioned earlier on that often the developer wants to save the capex because the opex isn't his problem, and I agree with that. But if a developer is developing a building and will be renting the building, then the high operational cost ends up in a high service charge. And particularly now, when there's a lot of empty flats, tenants can choose where to go based on rent and service charge. And the service charge reflects the standards, but also the cost of delivering the services. So again, it's false economy, really, to be honest.
Correct. And, you know, another issue with the transition period is the objectives. So as we're talking about these multiple stakeholders, they each have different objectives. So you have the construction team trying to hand over and exit. They want the transition to happen in a day, literally.
Yes.
They're
away.
Exactly. You know, while, you know, you as the operator or FM service provider, you're looking in detail at every element and aspect. So Tariq, I'll ask you this, like, how do you suggest balancing these objectives when you have one stakeholder trying to exit and one is just coming in? So how do you reach a balance?
Again, it goes back to the design review and the construction RFP preparation. And so you have to, the challenge that we are facing in some of the developments is when you talk about the collection of data as an example, what is the definition of how are you expecting the main contractor to provide you with the asset details? What is the definition of an asset? Which format to be used for providing this? What is the requirement? What type of as-built drawing is required? As-built drawing accuracy is another problem. I've seen many cases during my career. It is very rare that you find a as-built drawing to receive accurate as-built drawing from the construction team and the project management team. So the definition of what is expected for the handback from the construction to operation to FM, the inclusion of this in the construction RFP is very important, and unfortunately is not happening. There will be a cost impact. Some contractors won't understand the requirement of the FM, which will oblige them to use an FM consultant or an FM expert, which will create an additional cost. But again, this will save a lot of money on the developer and on the operation at the handover stage.
Yeah.
Warranties also is an important, warranties also, the handover of warranties, in which, what type of warranties. The last thing that you want to do is to buy a warranty and don't hand it over to FM, or FM is not aware of it, or you don't have the right documentation and you lose it, especially when you're talking about long-term warranties like waterproofing, or that's something that will stay for years. And if you don't have the right documents, you will lose your rights, something that you paid a fortune for, but you're not benefiting from.
Correct. Now, Dr. Anas, Tariq spoke about asset information, which is very crucial to the transition stage. And with the emergent trends in construction, you have the BIM, you have a lot of data collected for AI systems in major projects and all. So how is this transitioned into operations? Because in construction, they're developing BIM for construction phase, but that information is vital to operating the building as well. So how do you see this transition of data or asset information between construction and operations?
Absolutely. BIM is one of the critical issues and topics that has been discussed quite widely now, and there's different countries and different organizations have approached it differently. But I'll go back to the main issue of the transition that we have between, and this will clarify this issue and other issues as well. And coming from as I said, from the project delivery team, we do a lot of effort and there's a lot in the delivery phase that do a lot of effort to make sure that we do deliver something that is viable for the maintenance and operation teams. But because of the issues that we have, whether it's the client's mindset, whether it's the construction process that we all used to, and we know it's not 100% right, because of the contracts that we have, because of the budgeting that we talked about, the capex and opex. These are all of the factors that stop us from working as seamless. I mean, as it is, during the construction phase, we have issues between handing over from the design phase to the construction phase, never mind from the construction phase to the operation. I know there's a lot of contracts that has been trying to resolve this issue, where we have, build and operate, and transfer, such as similar to what we have as design and build contracts, to resolve these issues, but still doesn't really rectify that. However, to go back into, for example, the build and operate contracts that we would have, or design, build and operate, where a contractor may come in, design the actual assets, build it and operate it, we do see a bit of enhancement now, because obviously they do think about the facility at that stage. They do want to make sure that they do have some assets that they can manage. whether it's as-built, whether it's the asset information models, or whether it's the information that they need. I mean, to go back a step before BIM, until now we still hand over projects in printouts. Even if a project is delivered during the project with BIM, whether it's the right BIM or not, we still hand over 2D drawings because we do have that in the regulations. So it's bigger than just the project and the development team and the operation and maintenance. We do have requirements that data has to be, or the information of the building has to be shared in boxes, and there's a whole room for that to be handed over, and there's a specified room where you have all the documents printed out in there that the likes of Michael and Tarek will have to go through every time they take over a building. With the shift with BIM, there has been a shift. I mean, coming from the UK with the BIM mandates and the requirements of BIM on public projects, where now we see there's a lot of shifts away from that. We do see there's a lot of people has been thinking about the asset information models. We do see a lot of developers developing what we call an AIR, which is an asset information requirements with the project's requirements. We do see the shift, but still, if we don't tackle the issue from the foundation and look at the CapEx and OpEx issues and look at the mindsets and the way we look at assets or the construction phase in general, only then we could fix that issue. I don't think BIM is the ultimate solution, although it does fix a lot of issues. It does ultimately should provide us with an asset information model that should be in a way that has all the information as well as the data that you need, as well as the assets as-built information should be. Whether that is doable or not, I think to fix that, we have to go straight to the foundation and try and fix it from there.
I think I'm going to have to shed light on Michael right now, because I'm seeing, I've seen something emerging from what Tarek has said. Everything needs to be defined at the early stage. He's talking about the employer's requirements. Dr. Anas as well is saying, this needs to be set up from the core, from the foundation of it. Now, as consultants, FM consultants, I think, Michael, you are in the best position to create a level playground for everyone, to put together the requirements of operations at early stage, because as you mentioned, you're involved in design reviews and early consultancy engagements. So how do you see that being accepted by the asset owners, or how is their response to having these requirements included, as opposed to typically having construction guidelines and handover guidelines for the contractor, but also from an operational perspective, so adding an FM input to the employer's requirements?
Generally, it comes as a complete surprise because it's something they've just not thought of at all. It's something that we always suggest, and depending on the maturity and sophistication of the client, sometimes they recognize the value, sometimes they don't. Again, as I said in an earlier answer, money talks, and the best way to demonstrate it's worth the investment is to demonstrate what it could cost them if they don't invest a very, very small, relatively very, very small amount of money at this stage. Picking up on Tarek's point and your question, Eunice, specifying what should be done, yes, that's a big part of it, but there's a very, very simple solution. Again, it goes down to money. That ultimately the DLP retention should not be released unless the organization's director of FM, head of operations, whatever, unless they sign off the release of retention. Not the development director, not the accountant, not the CEO. The guy who's responsible, guy or girl who's responsible to operate the building, they have to sign off that they've received the information, they've got what they need, it's accurate, they've had sufficient training, sufficient systems, operational training, all the rest of it. And when they sign, that's when retention gets released. That will kill it, just like that.
100%. But Michael, the challenge here, what if the training is not mentioned, training requirements not mentioned in the RFP?
It
So
should be.
it
has to
it
be.
should be. It
I
should
agree.
be. But what if you hold the retention? Then even the finance, the CEO, the contractor representative will come and tell you, why are you holding my retention? This is
Sure.
not a contractual obligation.
That's not fair. It
Yeah.
shouldn't come as a surprise. That's not fair.
Exactly. So it always goes to the right RFP of
Agreed.
the beginning. Yes.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
Somebody like ourselves should develop a set of FM requirements
100%.
associated with the handover. That's an appendix in the construction contract, very, very clear. And it's also a clause, very, very clear, that the retention will only be released once the guy responsible, director of FM, whoever it is, signs off that he's satisfied and is willing to take the building.
No, we have a checklist.
Yeah,
Those are the requirements to release the retention.
very simple.
I definitely like that idea, Michael, and we actually had this embedded in one of the projects that we previously had, but it came out with a lot of problems and issues, and it almost ended up to a lawsuit because the one thing is setting up together a criterion, a checklist, which we did, similar to the snagging list. We have a list that says, handover checklist, which we had that, but there was a big difference between what the facility management and operation team said that an as-built drawings should be and what the contractor said it would be. And there was a lot of arguments about things to do with tolerance and these kind of stuff. And because of the mindset, going back to the foundation, because of the mindset that we have in the construction phase and other stuff, which is, the requirements of the project and etc., we have as-builts that we can never go back into it anymore. They've already been buried. They're already, whether they're inside concrete or whatever, you can never find out if they're accurate or not. But the facility management operation team said they're not. Then where do you draw the line? So I do agree with the retention idea and the concept behind that, because at the end of the day, this project has to be the only way you can really make sure that you provide something that is feasible for and usable for the facility management operation is to make sure they have a say in during the project, similar to holding the retention, etc. But that did lead to a lot of issues, just from experience, as you can imagine.
I can, and thank you for sharing that. To be honest, I think the bottom line of all this, what's really ironic, is when the construction contractor enters into a BOT contract, so he has responsibility, he makes sure it's right.
100%. Yeah.
When he doesn't have responsibility, he does as little as he can, and he gets off that site as quick as he can. And I find that very ironic.
To be fair,
I was going to say, I was going to be the devil's advocate and say that there is, it's not really fair to say the design team or the contract team or the construction team doesn't really think about the facility management operation. As I said, there is a lot of aspect to that. You do have a client that comes to you and say, hand over as soon as possible with this limited budget. Do value engineering as well. Make sure you do value engineering to make sure you get rid of certain things. So you are pressured to do that. You are pushed as a contractor or a designer to find yourself, even though you really want to do the best sometimes for the facility management operation, you really can't, because you're really limited to what you can do.
To be fair to the construction industry, with the evolvement of FM industry in the Middle East created a lot of requirements that were not there in the past. So the traditional contractors will not understand the requirement of FM of the building operation at the end of the project, which will require extensive work, a lot of admin works, preparation of files, the format, and all of this. So, and it is also this will require a lot of investment from the contractor side. This is why the challenge is created here.
Absolutely.
Correct. That does make sense. We have a question from Rehan Hussain. I'll direct it to you, Michael. His question is how property management involvement can smooth the transition management process. So the involvement of the property manager.
It's more of the same, really, to be honest. I mean, ultimately, when a building is in operation, then the property manager is representing the client and overseeing the work of the FM providers. So they have to have the right mindset. They have to have the right paradigm, if you like, that it's an investment, not a cost. A property manager's, one of their core criteria should be protecting the value of the asset. And from a property management perspective, how do you do that? By maintaining high rentals and keeping the building in good condition, high levels of service, all helps to do that at a optimal cost, shall we say. But they have to believe in that. If they believe in that and they also push for that, they have the client's ear.
Yes.
The client trusts them. So the client should listen to them. But the property manager will only say what we hope they will say if they believe in the message.
Correct. Okay. Another thing, Gideon has, he's quite excited. The two examples you gave, the tower in Saudi, and also Tariq, you gave an example as well. So Abdul Jabbar is also asking how these problems can be mitigated, because it's all coming down to cost. So now these case studies that both of you are talking about, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have faced similar achievements or problems. Is it going to be helpful to kind of put together, all these case studies and the impacts that these operational involvements has on projects? Because if you look at BIM as an example, BIM is solely based on case studies that have proven the impact of BIM when it comes to cost saving, and also be something of value to do a similar thing for early involvement and the value of transition management, and kind of put together these examples that all of you are stating, to enhance and put out the value of this, and maybe that might help create a more accepting environment, to look at spending this money, not just focusing on CapEx, and it becomes, a balance between CapEx and OpEx. So Dr. Anas, you mentioned, CapEx is the core of it. Do you think, putting this information out there could potentially sway people's mindsets?
Absolutely, I think so. But it's also something that we all know in the industry, whether it's the construction industry, design industry, or the facility management operation or property management. I think the ultimate solution to this really is to all work together. And I know you mentioned BIM again, and I think the work that has been driven for the implementation of BIM during the construction phase has worked to some extent, especially in UK and some other regions as well, in Singapore and etc. And that was pushed through the collaboration aspects, because we had the similar issue, as I said, between the handover from a design team, from a design phase to the construction phase to the contractor. We had similar issues that we're talking about now to the handover and transition to the facility management operation. So I think the same thing that we did for that, during the project phase, we could do the same thing for the operation. And it's actually more important to do for the maintenance and operation, where we should all work in a more collaborative environment to see how we can share the information, make sure we can hand over the information when it needs to be. And I know we're always going to be faced with a CapEx and OpEx issue. That's just the way it is. But the same thing we were faced, when it comes to the design phase and construction phase. They both have different budgets, they both have different requirements, and etc. They both are priced differently. So I think in a bigger scale, I know, from the transition from design to construction is not that big if you compare it to from construction to facility management operation. What is a starting point to learn from, and to see how we can resolve the issue forward.
All right. Now, Tariq, I'll direct this question to you. We've spoken about the stakeholders and each having different objectives and all. Now, Mohammed Kalf is asking in particular the coordination between FM team and PM team, especially during transition. So he says there's a lot of conflicts between property managers and FM during this stage. How can we improve that?
I can't say that there is a conflict. There is no, in some companies, there is, or some development, there is no clear definition of roles and responsibilities and overlap between the two departments or the two teams. But in a well-structured developments and company, there shouldn't be any conflict. The roles and responsibility of each team is very well defined. The main challenge here is that in the budget preparation that was done by the property management require the input of the FM team, and the right communication between the two teams will ensure that everything is going smoothly. I really don't see. I've worked in companies where we used to have property and facility management working hands in hands. Currently, a lot of clients, we report to property management or work closely with property management, and there shouldn't be any conflict if the roles and responsibility are very well defined. If the budget is prepared properly, everything should go smoothly, based on the input of FMT, of course.
Yes, correct. I think their objectives are more closely aligned because they're both moving into the operational phase and both in it for the long term,
Yes.
which makes sense. Okay, now Michael, I'll ask you this question. When it comes to transition management, the use of standards and looking at the likes of CIBC and other standards to use during transition management, does it help, especially looking at this region? Is it suitable? Are there guidelines that developers and operators should follow to make the process easy and more smooth?
I think we may have lost Michael. I think he was having technical issues.
Yes, dropped out of it.
But there he is. I was going to say I'll take a stab at answering that question, but I'll leave it to Michael. He just rejoined.
Okay, Michael, I'm not sure you caught my question.
No, I didn't, sir. I've just reconnected. I lost my internet connection. Apologies. Could you repeat the question?
Nice to have you back. My question was the use of existing standards such as CIBC and the likes during transition. Do you think for this part of the world, especially, it's quite suitable for operators and FM property managers to use these standards as guides to help them achieve a successful transition?
I think that word sums it up, guide. Why? Because the industry in the Middle East is so immature compared to other parts of the world, whether it's UK, Australia, America, where it's very mature and these standards are of a norm. I guess you guys are mostly based in the UAE. Well, let me tell you, Saudi, oh my God, it's the Wild West. It is so immature, it's just not funny. So I think we should all work hard to aspire to help to mature the industry. And obviously these standards are fantastic, and it's what we should all aspire to, but it's a journey. And I think as property professionals or clients or consultants or even FM service providers, we have to recognize it's a journey, and it would be naive to assume that we can just throw a standard on the desk and it will be met completely. It's naive in this part of the world, but we should definitely work towards it 100%.
Okay, I think what you said actually, speaks on a question we just received from Joanne. So Tariq, I'll ask you. Her question is around how would you rate the maturity in the Middle East? So she is talking about the importance of the asset owner's maturity, and how would you?
We had a Middle East Facility Management Association. We had many sessions about this topic. How do you see the FM in Middle East? How do you see the asset management in Middle East? Um, you cannot have one vision for the whole Middle East. It depends market to market. Of course, the most matured market is the UAE, mainly Dubai, followed by Abu Dhabi. After that, you can say Qatar, Oman, Saudi Arabia to a certain extent. Levant countries still Syria, Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon still a little bit far. Egypt is also advancing in this in the right direction. Having benchmarking between the Middle East and the Western countries and the advanced countries and the advanced market in FM is not the right way to think about it, because the market is different. Take into consideration that our industry is manpower driven, and in the Middle East and GCC we depend on expat manpower, while in the Western countries you have the local manpower. So management of manpower is completely different, and it's a main driver of the FM performance. Asset managers, developers, landlords, also it varies between the markets. Even within Dubai, you have the traditional developers, whether it is big family groups or you have individual owners that owns a couple of buildings in Old Dubai or in the city of Abu Dhabi, and you have the big developers that are trying to implement the latest standards when it comes to FM operation and building operations. Each FM client have their own way of doing this type of business. You have their own input, but overall they are on the right direction to follow the international standards. We've seen that many FM service providers and FM clients are starting to follow the international standards, the SFG 20, BICS, ISSA, NFPA, all these international standards are implemented and forms part of all the RFP and FM contracts within the region.
Okay, great. Now we have a very broad question though, but I think there's something in there. Abdul Jabbar is asking these issues during transition and handover. He is asking who should take responsibility. Construction is,
this is the $1 million question.
Well,
I'd say.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry.
At the end of the day, I suppose the guy who holds all the cash, that's the client.
Yeah.
I've said several times, cash is king. And, if he becomes a believer in what we're saying, then he will make sure the construction contract contains the right clauses. He will make sure the operators are brought in due course. I'm not blaming the client, but what I'm saying is the only person who can fix this from top to bottom is the client.
Absolutely. We can see it's going back to what Tariq was saying about the evolvement of the industry, especially in Dubai. We can see there's a lot of developers that has noticed this issue and trying to fix it.
Yep.
The likes of EMAR, for example, and others. They've established their guidelines and protocols and requirements. They've tried to set up, and they have set up teams, and in some cases they even set up a separate company that is, that is working closely with their development team to make sure that they can work together on the transition, etc. So there is a lot of change that's happening in the Middle East, especially in Dubai, because obviously Dubai has gone through that exercise and the pain. Yeah. And hopefully maybe Saudi will learn from that, especially during the PIF projects.
Absolutely. It's happening.
We're already seeing that on some of the Giga projects in Saudi Arabia, where they're picking up on this.
Yep.
But there is an issue, however, in Saudi Arabia, because they don't really have the foundation of the supply chain that can reflect on that.
Yeah, agreed.
And this is maybe in Dubai, it's a lot more mature. But as I said, the ultimate solution, and to echo what Michael said, the ultimate solution is with the developer themselves.
Yeah.
There's different ways to approach it. There's different ways to do it, and there's lots of benchmarks that we can learn from. But there's definitely the developer has the ultimate key to the solution. Yeah.
Cash is king, right, Michael?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's what we all listen to.
So as we have just over 5 minutes, I'll wrap up by asking each of you to just leave us with parting words of wisdom. So Michael, you want to start?
Liverpool for the league. No, just kidding. Yeah, I've listened with great interest to what all the panelists have said, including yourself, of course, Yunus. And I think the takeaways are: listen to FM, it'll save you money. Bring us in early, don't make false economies, invest in the future. Too many people build something and then forget about it. They don't realize that that building can serve them for 30, 40 years if it's treated well. See it as a long-term investment, it'll look after you.
Correct. Dr. Anas?
From my side, I say, and this is happening. A lot of my ex-colleagues are in Saudi, and I always say to them, because of the capitalization that's happened in the world, there's a lot of countries to revive their economies. They tend to build or go to the rural areas to build new cities to obviously capture the expand of the nations and to build on the economies as well. And this is the time where they can actually learn from the mistakes and build assets that will stand for 30 to 50 years, not just concentrate on, because we had to do that during the construction phase or during the construction or building assets in existing cities. It was really tough to think about the sustainability and the global warming and etc. And I think that the best way to do it is when we start from scratch. And for those that are starting from scratch, to bear with the end in mind and listen to the facility management and operation as well, as Michael said.
Yeah, just one thing there. You mentioned the long term, looking at 30, 50 years, especially for, your background, construction and smart construction. With the continuous, changes in technology, do you see that, affecting it? Because, every day we see a new version of BIM, a new AI implementation during the construction or design. And do you think that will also have an impact on, while you're trying to catch up with this, there's still a lot changing in your industry as well?
Absolutely, that needs a different panel discussion altogether. But yeah, the use of AI, the use of IoT, the use of things such as the BIM and the asset information model afterwards, the digital twinning as well. Absolutely, there's a lot to build on, and there's a lot that has been captured, especially in cities like Dubai, especially towards the Dubai smart city and integrating certain systems together to make more intelligent solutions or decisions, and more importantly to enhance the way people work. Using sensors to make sure that things can only be fixed or operated on once there's an issue, or be more preemptive rather than go fix the issue when it does happen. You should know when the issue could happen or what the reason is. So there's a lot of technology out there. It's just a matter of making sure that. But to be honest, and I always say this, for us to have smarter cities, we have to have smarter buildings, and for us to have smarter buildings, we need to build them smarter. And that's the ultimate solution for smart cities.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now, Tariq, over to you.
Of course, I support what the gentlemen have just mentioned. I would like to add to what Michael said, that in addition that FM will save you money, developers need to take into consideration, and a lot of big developers understand this, that there is a reputational risk of not providing a proper operation of your building. A well-maintained building will support the developers in selling their new developments. Today, if
Very
you
good
want to
point.
buy, if you want to buy from a developer, you will go and see the existing building. And if the building is not well maintained, you will not buy.
Yep.
So investing in FM, in addition to the saving in the building operation and the operation budget and all of this, also will support the main objective of the developer, which is the sale of their properties. So the more the efficient the operation of the building, the more happier residents of your buildings, the more sales that will be generated in your new development.
Excellent point. Excellent.
Yeah, that captures it because it's all about value.
Absolutely. Yep.
Getting value. Okay. I think we're out of time. We just have 2 minutes to go. So Donna, we will just wrap the session. Thank you everyone, to our viewers. And there are a few questions I wasn't able to attend to, but you can move the questions to the lounge where I'll still be present and try to respond to whatever we can respond to. And thank you everyone. Thank you, Michael, Dr. Anas and Tariq for your.
Thanks, gents. Very enjoyable discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.